President Goodluck Jonathan, Chairman and founder of the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, Madam Jonathan, Governor of Kogi State, Governor of Bauchi State, all protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen, it is a special pleasure for me today to stand before you and talk about such a topical subject, the contemporary challenges of nation and state building in a context of multi-diversities. I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the foundation to have selected me as keynote speaker on this important occasion. Before I go into my considerations on the subject, I would like to pay a tribute to a number of colleagues and friends from Nigeria, this big country, who are no longer, and whose writings, teaching, and my interactions with them have contributed to my own intellectual and professional development. The late Professor Abdoulaye, historian, we can say, but he is the father of African historian. Professor Sam Aluko, Professor Etienne Udom, Professor Nzimiro, Professor Adebayo Adedeji, Professor Claude Ake, Bade Onimode, Gabriel Olusanya, Bala Usman, Ombuka Dike, Ogundibe Leslie, Wahab Goodluck. May their soul rest in eternal peace. Amen. The topic of today is important. Not only it is important, it's relevant and timely, not only for Nigeria, but the whole of the continent of Africa and indeed the world. We are witnessing deep crises everywhere, in all continents. When we open our paper every morning, we watch television, we listen to the radio, we can see the magnitude of a crisis the world is witnessing today. It looks as if the world is turning upside down. Leaders are concerned, citizens of all walks of life, and especially women, young people, are feeling the brunt of this crisis. In Africa, before our eyes, states are on the brink of collapse, not only in the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa. Millions of Africans are turned into refugees. Wars and destructions of home, increased poverty and inequality are plaguing nations the world over. and particularly in Africa. Widening mistrust between the state and citizens is daily being observed. Senseless killings by terrorist groups and rebels of all kinds sowed hatred among communities who not long ago lived peacefully and harmoniously as neighbors. Xenophobia, chauvinism are the scourge of the day. Therefore, the state and nations are faced with challenges, tremendous challenges. But I would like to insist particularly on the situation in our beloved continent, Africa. The major question is which way Africa? What future is in store for this continent and these people? Two possible ways are before us. Either more chaos, dictatorship, and stagnation, or resilience, democracy, and unity. These are the two ways which are before us as a continent, as people in Africa. As Frantz Fanon used to say, every generation has to discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. We are to fulfill our mission. The present generation have to fulfill its mission. It is up to the Africans themselves to find the solution to African problems in solidarity with each other in every nation and across the continent. Africa is in need for urgent search of a wise, capable, dedicated leadership to lead us into the way. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the time to reflect seriously, to do our introspection, to conduct honest self-criticism in order to identify the root causes of the present scourges and how to cure them. The current crisis of state and nation building in Africa is a long-standing historical phenomenon. The national flag and national anthem alone do not give us ipso facto legitimacy to the state or unite its components in a sustainable manner. We must admit that the state in Africa is inherited from the colonial system. It is not the product of internal dynamic, political, economic, or social. The state we have in all African countries have been imposed by violence, by an alien force the colonial conqueror. They bring together forcefully different ethnic groups at all levels. The colonial state did not have the objective of creating African nations out of the colonial setup. Its objective was to dominate, exploit the natural resources and cheap labor power of the colonial people. Here we can look at some historical examples. When you look at the crisis, for instance, in Côte d'Ivoire, some 10 years earlier on, Côte d'Ivoire plunged into a dire civil war, a major political crisis which is up to now simmering in spite of 10 years almost of new political dispensation. What is the root cause of this crisis in Côte d'Ivoire? It is a typical example of how the state manages diversity, political, social, and ethnic. We all remember in the 1990s, a concept was launched called l'ivoirité. There is still a debate on the sense of this concept. However, what happened is that a large section of the political class in Côte d'Ivoire have come up with the idea to think that some section of the country are not Ivorians. Namely, people coming from the north are considered as non-Ivorians. They would include also citizens from different countries of West Africa and beyond. I don't need to go into the intricacies of this crisis in Côte d'Ivoire. The results we know. Thousands of people were slaughtered. Political collapse, chaos in the country. President Babo was sent to the International Tribunal in The Hague. And up until now, the debate in Côte d'Ivoire about who is true Ivorian is raging. But when you look at the situation, a sound leadership should know that Côte d'Ivoire is a creation of the French colonial regime. Côte d'Ivoire, as it is today, in its borders, was drawn in 1947. 1947. After President Bédié was born, after President Gbagbo was born, after President Ouattara was born. Three of them were main contenders for political office in Côte d'Ivoire. They were all born before Côte d'Ivoire was established as a colony in its current borders. Yet there is a constitutional debate about the nationality, the citizenship of that country. To be a president, you have to be Ivorian of origins. Which Côte d'Ivoire? Côte d'Ivoire before 1947 or Côte d'Ivoire after 1947? You see how history is manipulated. The lack of knowledge of the history of Côte d'Ivoire. When that colony was established in 1947, it was at the request of the Emperor of the Mossi in the then Upper Volta, Burkina Faso today. The French used that part of the colony because before 47, Côte d'Ivoire and current Burkina Faso was one and same colony, including part of Mali, part of Niger. But what was the use of Upper Volta, that is current day Burkina Faso? It was just a reservoir of forced manpower, forced labor for the plantation economy of southern Côte d'Ivoire. Millions of Burkinabe, we would say today, were forced into the plantation economy, into southern Côte d'Ivoire. So the two colonies historically has been tied up through this economic system established by the French colonizer. So migrations between the two territories have been going on for centuries of the French domination since the early 20th century. So in a country like this, if you want to manage the diversity, you have to take into account this historical origin of the population, the historical origins of the people living today in Côte d'Ivoire. By excluding people who have been established there for 100 years, you are bound to create a situation of political crisis, a situation of social crisis in that country. For the same reason, Senegal, as a producer of groundnut, has received millions over years of colonial domination of forced laborers from the French Sudan, today Mali. In central Senegal and southern Senegal, you have millions of people who are originally from the former French Sudan. Gambia and Senegal has been created as a result of the imperial rivalry between Britain and France as early as the 18th century. Today, the two countries are separated, although the people are from the same culture, from the same ethnic groups. You look at the Central African Republic. That country was created again as a result of the imperial rivalry at the close of the 19th century between France Belgium, and Britain. The colony of Central African Republic was established around two rivers, the river Ubangi and the river Shari. So the colony was called Ubangi Shari, carved out of territory, northern part of what we call today Chad, eastern part of Chad, part of Sudan, Belgian Congo, today DRC, etc. Niger and Nigeria, the same, along the river Niger. The imperial river, we all know about the Fashoda events, what nearly brought the British and the French to war at the close of the 19th century. Within the context of the Berlin Conference, within the context of what was called the battle for Africa. South Africa, when you look at it today, the xenophobia, the chauvinism, which is shown, it is a result of the apartheid system. Not only a system of racial domination, but also a system of exploitation of cheap labor power from different colonies of Southern Africa. Forced migrants workers who came by millions into South Africa for the mining industries. So, when you look at the geography of a diversity in African countries, you will look at it from the standpoint of history, long-term history. And these are realities we have to take into account if we want to manage both diversity. A sound leadership would not say, but somebody who came 50 years before independence has less right than somebody who came 100 years before or somebody who came 20 years before. So we have to look into the situation politically and to say that the management of diversity is a must for any state if it has to remain as a united state. Unfortunately, we must say, during the battle for independence, the national project, whether it is through negotiated settlement to accede to independence, or through armed struggle or mass movement, the national project have not been fought through seriously in terms of the management of diversity. In most cases, the leadership looked at formal constitution of the nation within the borders of a traditional colonial state and the existence of different groups within, but the national project was not really reflected upon as a need to change the course of the history of the people. How to change the colonial state into a real nation state of a new kind after independence. That was the challenge, which was not really reflected upon very seriously, and we must admit this. People of my generation, I'm in my mid-70s, I have witnessed the rise of all the national flags in Africa. I was in a boarding school, a kind of federal boarding school in Saint-Louis, the former capital of Senegal, which enrolled students from all over French Africa, from Brazzaville to Mauritania, Central Africa, Chad, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire. I have contemporaries. In 1959, between 1959 and 1961, almost every month we celebrate one new flag. We thought that raising the flag and listening to national anthem will be enough to rebuild the state, to create cohesion among the people. But 60 years of independence have shown that this is not enough. We need more and better than that. There is a need to think through the conditions in which the state can be built more efficiently, the conditions in which the people can coexist peacefully and harmoniously. There is a need to look at our institutional mechanism. In all African countries, we have more or less borrowed the systems, the Western systems of political institutions, juridical institutions, economic and social organization. But in view of what is happening today in the continent, we can see that we have not been able to create a real capable state. Which will cater for the needs of the people, which will attend to the aspirations of the population as a whole. We have not created a state for the citizens. The civil wars, what we are seeing now in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, in Southern Africa, show clearly that in terms of diversity management, which we see by and large, is ethnic politics. Ethnic politics against the state of citizens. Citizens seen as individuals with aspirations, in solidarity with other individuals within the framework of one country. Those citizens who should be considered as individual who must be equal, with equal opportunity, equal treatment at all levels. I think today this topic is very timely. We have to revisit our political system. For instance, is the presidential system of leadership adequate as its function in many or almost African countries? This needs to be investigated more when we look at how the presidential system functions in the countries stemming from the French tradition. We call it le présidentialisme impérial, imperial presidency. The president holds all the power in the state and subdue all the other institutions. I think this has to be discussed thoroughly, given the consequences on the political process. The parliamentary system, the local government, the judiciary, 60 years after the experience of the processes of those institutions, it is high time that we look at them very critically. Aren't we giving more focus on politics and processes at the highest level of the state at the expense of the grassroots level? The political party system itself, when we look at it, I think it is high time to reform it. During the struggle for national liberation, political parties, National Front of Liberations, the armed groups, etc., used to be a group of people bound together around values, around the idea of a nation, the collective destiny. As times goes on, what we are witnessing now is something totally different. Parties are electoral committees to bring to power a bunch of fellows who are ready to capture the state and its resources. the values, the principles, the national interest, the aspirations of the people at the grassroots levels are paid lip service to. This we can see. Worse still, in many countries today, political parties are hijacked by criminal gangs making money through illicit means. And when a group is in power, they hold him at ransom. No wonder why our political party system is now considered to be obsolete. And we have to look at it very carefully. And I'm not saying that from just a theoretical point of view or an academic point of view. I have been a political practitioner myself for 60 years, looking at looking at, for instance, in Senegal, in many other countries in the continent, how the political party systems have completely deflected from its original sense. The situation is even compounded by rampant corruption, nepotism, as I said, ethnic politics. Ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, there is an urgent need to redress the situation before it is too late. Before the states in Africa collapse one after the other. Before chaos takes place irremediably. To redress the situation, I think there are a number of considerations which I would put forward. The current crisis of management of diversity, the current crisis of the state is the reflection of the crisis of leadership on the African continent. To state it more prosaically, we need another quality of leadership on the African continent. A visionary leadership. A visionary leadership armed with a new code of governance, a new ethics, a compassionate leadership, a learned leadership. The leadership is not somebody who knows everything, who pretends to know everything, to be able to do everything, but to learn from others. A humble leadership. Who would know that when in office, they do not represent their ethnic group, their kith and kins, their cronies, but the whole nation, its diversity, who need to be served honestly in a dedicated manner. Humility is a quality of leadership at all levels. And today, when you look at the geography of the crisis on the continent, we can safely say that we are far from what leadership we want. Therefore, we need to build a new state from the state inherited from the colonial system. As I said, we will accommodate all the citizens irrespective of their ethnic, cultural, religious background. A state which will put the merit at the center of the system of promotion. The reform of political parties is imperative in that regard. The need to foster civil society as a counterweight to the executive branch of government, to the judiciary, and other institutions in society. An independent civil society, a strong civil society, is an imperative for democratic procedures. More importantly, given the level of poverty, the destitution of laboring people of our continent, it is not enough to have proper institutional mechanisms. What is more important is to reshape the economic model in our continent. We all know, and we can see this today. Basically, independence did not mean so far a change of the economic system. Basically, what we have up until now is what we call the colonial pact. The colonial pact. The model of liberal economic policy, which have put Africa in a position of permanent supplier of raw material, mineral, agriculture. As an American chronicler said, Africa is that land that God has put in reserve for humanity. Today, when you look at the partnership Africa is entering into with the rest of the world, you would realize that this partnership is the partnership of the horse and the cavalier. Mr. President, sometime when I look at the summit, Africa is attending with 53 African countries, attending summit with every single power outside Africa. I pose myself a question. Is really this our future? Africa is today, as I said, like a roast lamb on the table. All the partners come with their fork and knife and cut the part they want. And we say, we are glad to say, this is the time of Africa. Everybody is quoting us, not for our eyes, our face, but to own us. So long as the economic policy inherited from the colonial system, guarded by the Bretton Woods system till today, reinforced by the different partnerships we are entering into with the rest of the world, poverty will not be alleviated from the continent. There will be more destruction, more havoc, more hunger, more famine on the continent. So we have to redress this. And I propose that this issue of what new economic dispensation for the continent be put on the agenda of the dialogue series. The issue of education is all very important. Africa is the only continent where the education system is provided through foreign languages. We were British, Portuguese, French, basically. This is a very big question to be answered. Why? Education is the major instrument for the development of a nation. Cultural development, scientific development, political development, the understanding among the citizens of a country. All the countries which have developed have put the education as their major concern. So the reform of education is absolutely important. Another, last but one, not but one issue is how to rebuild peace on the African continent, given the level of war perspective, how to get the best practices out of the situation as they unfold in different countries of Africa. Mr. President, again, I would like to express my gratitude for allowing me to introduce this important topic. And I would like to also encourage the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation to contribute, not only here in Nigeria, but also in other countries, and I'm happy that you raised that issue. The problems of the building of a state and the nation in Africa. And we need a strong and peaceful Nigeria, not only for West Africa, but for the rest of the continent and indeed the world. And I sincerely hope that which will be reached. I thank you very much, and I'm sorry for you.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.